The 10 worst years of a 60-40 portfolio. Not nearly as bad as what you think. So I follow my man, what's his name? Ben Carlson. I follow him on LinkedIn. He is the director of institutional asset management at Repost Wealth Management. He lives in Grand Rapids. Anyway, big fan, long time. And he posted this the other day, the 10 worst years of a 60-40 portfolio. And you can see right here, 1931 down 27%, 1930 down 37, down 20%. 2022 down 18, 1974 down 15, 2008 down 14, and 1930 down 13. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 years it was down more than double digits. A 60-40 portfolio going back to 1926, down 6 years. That's it, down 20, down more than double digits. 1931 and 1937 were only times it was down 20%, but actually in 1931 we had deflation of 9%. So in 1931, the real return of a 60 portfolio was less than 27.3, is less than 20%. 1937, 2022, and 1974 were the only years that, when you factor in real returns to the 60-40 portfolio, actually have a 20% or worse rate of return when you factor in real returns of inflation adjusted. 2022 was the worst year ever when you factor in inflation, because inflation in 2022 was 8% on top of a 17.9 slide. 1974 we had inflation of 11% on top of 14.7 slide, but still 2022 is the worst year we've ever had. All right, 2008 there's no inflation, 1930 was deflation, 1945 just wasn't anything. So you can see right here, of only 3 years where we're actually down a real 20% or more loss. Only 2 years, a nominal 20% or more loss. And what does that mean? Well, when you factor in the guardrails, you've only imputed the guardrails twice if you use a nominal rate of return, or 3 times if you used a real rate of return, which includes inflation. And then what happened the following years? 1932, only down 1.7. 1938, up 19.3. 2023 up 17%, 1975 up 23.6, 2009 up 11%, 19 right here, the 1930 after 1930 we're down 27.3, but again this is with a 9% deflation, and this was with a 1930 was with a what deflation? 1930 was with a 2.3% deflation. So you've only put the guardrails in a couple times over the course of 100 years of investment time frame. And only in 1973, 74, 1930 and 31, and then even going to 32 and 1930. So basically you have these 3 years, 30, 31, 32, 1973, 74. That's it, man. Oops. That's it in terms of bear markets. Or not, well, hell, not even bear markets in terms of, really major downside. 1969 is down 6.9. Is up 8.8 the next year. 2002 is down 7.1, is up 17.2 the next year. 1941 is down 8.5, is up 12.4. I mean, it's just, we don't have enough. We don't have the 40-60, 60-40 portfolio. We just don't. We don't have enough in terms of what would you use for the bonds in a 40-60 portfolio. 40% stocks, 6% bonds. I don't know. I mean, you could use 10-year treasuries, I suppose, but still, at the end of the day, if the market, in terms of 60-40 portfolio is kind of like the go-to, a 40-60 portfolio is my go-to, because right now we're getting paid decently to hold bonds. But either way, it's tough to go wrong, because here's a 60-40 portfolio, 60% in the S&P 500, 40% in 10-year treasuries, and yet you're still, other than a couple of years, you're just not getting crushed, man. You haven't been. Yeah, you took it on the chin a couple of times here, 1973 and 74, 1930, 31, 32. 2022 is the worst year ever, and then the following year you got 17% back. It's pretty good. That should make you feel pretty good, man. So anyway, I'm a big fan of Ben Carlson's work, and I think this just goes to show you that at the end of the day, if you can hang in there, you're probably going to be okay. Now, with that said, I will show you, though. Remember, if we go back to the buckets, on a 60-40 portfolio, the drawback that we had isn't that because in the 1960s, you can see, it wasn't that the markets were getting crushed. And actually, I'll just use it as a Wellington for our proxy here, because Wellington is basically a 60-40 portfolio. So we're going to go to the 1960s, and you can see this is inflation, down 6%, down 7%, down 5%. down 11 to 73, 74. But it wasn't even because of the market getting killed that made you lose your shirt if you were spending too much. It was the inflation. The numbers right in here from 62, we're going from 62 to basically 80, basically 77. Those were the times. So you can't just look at the guardrails as saving grace, because the guardrail doesn't take into consideration inflation as well. And that's the challenge. So you got to look at an inflationary perspective too. How much is inflation eating away at my returns? Because if that is that being reflected, I mean, again, inflation in 19, look, here's Wellington. In 1969, 1969, Wellington was only down 7.8, but when you factor inflation, it was down 13%. You see what I'm saying? And so if you like, you got to look at inflation as well as your total rate of return to get a gauge of when you got to cut back spending. Anyways, just something to think about. All right, God bless. Paw that like button. We'll see you.